Welcome to Refuel with Jennifer Ballou. Join Jennifer for the next hour for a time to recharge, refresh, and refuel your heart and soul. Here's your host, Jennifer Ballou.
Hey everyone, welcome to the show. I am so happy to have you join me today. I've got another great conversation with one of my friends, Dani Stroda, for you just over the next couple of weeks. We just sat down and shared our hearts. Dani shares a little bit of her testimony in her walk into holy yoga and just different aspects of, how our lives kind of are similar. And we share some different stories about that and just connecting with people and looking at things a little differently. So I really hope you enjoy the show. We'll just go ahead and dive into it. So I have with me today Dani Stroda. They just recently moved here from Nebraska. Yes.
We did, yes.
Okay. And we have a lot of different things we want to talk about and all that kind of stuff. And we can't decide on anything. So we're just going to start talking about Dani and her journey into, I don't know, you could share some of your testimony too, just life in general.
Yeah.
But really right now, Dani teaches yoga, and it's through a curriculum called Holy Yoga at my studio. Mm-hmm. And so there's a lot of things kind of we want to touch on that, because I know it's very controversial in the Christian community. If you can hear an eye roll in there, there is one.
Maybe a couple.
Yeah, a few. And just we're going to maybe, who knows if we'll get to it, but kind of touch on some of that and kind of into the Enneagrams things, just all sorts of things. We'll just see where it takes us and all of that kind of stuff. So,
sounds good.
So Dani's going to start talking now. I'll shut up.
No, well, thanks for having me. I think over the last few years, I've just been on a journey to wholeness, to wellness. I met Jesus when I was 7, and I have loved Jesus my whole life. That doesn't mean I haven't had rebellious years towards my parents or made bad choices in my life. Same. But really, at the end of the day, it's like I knew I could always come back to Jesus, even through some hard stuff. It's like maybe I couldn't trust anybody else, but I could come back to Jesus. And so really have lived my life that way. And a few years ago, 5 years ago, our family, my husband and I have been married for 23 years, and we have 5 kids, and that's a whole story in itself. Our oldest is 22, and our youngest is 18 months, and so it's a wild ride.
And they chose that, right?
I don't know that we chose that. Kind of. The first 3 came about 2.5 years apart, and then the surprises started about 9 years later. Yes. So then it got interesting. So, we've had our shares of just different life things that we've walked through. But 5 years ago, after a long series of events with the Lord, we have our first 4 are girls. And then didn't really know that we...
Could you try again?
That's your watch, and her watch and her phone have decided to join the conversation.
That's right. I think it's more sensitive these days. We have 4 girls, didn't know that we wanted any more kids, and then began to hear the Lord just speaking about having a son. And it was very crazy. I had a desire that I'd never had before, and very long story short, I ended up getting pregnant.
Right.
And ended up miscarrying at 20 weeks, which I didn't even know that was a thing, that halfway through. And so processing through that grief with the Lord actually wasn't, he was so faithful. Like, it wasn't necessarily hard. Part of my journey wasn't asking him why. I knew it wasn't him. I knew who my enemy was.
Right.
that the thief comes to steal, kill, and destroy.
Right.
Jesus comes to bring life and abundant life. And so that wasn't a wrestle with me, as it can be for some. But when months after that, I still had a desire to have a baby. A son, daughter, it didn't matter.
Right.
But that desire never left. And I started getting really frustrated with the Lord because I couldn't. And I had never, in many, many years.
Right. Yeah.
never dealt with infertility. Never. And so it was rough. Those, probably about a year after that miscarriage started just going, and also other things happening. I think the Lord really used that to trigger some inner things from
definitely.
My growing up with my parents, just church stuff.
Yes.
It's like
he
everything
tends to really like to get that stuff off the bottom. And somehow.
Yeah, it's amazing what can be used. Like, they seem totally not connected, but it was like something happened, and so much kind of just came to the surface, and stuff I didn't like, didn't know within me.
Yeah.
And so it was, I had times, it's like I would go out on our back porch and scream at the Lord, I don't even think you're here, but here I am talking to him.
Yeah.
So it's funny how that I don't even believe in God, but in that I'm having a conversation with God.
Right. Yeah.
So it was, I would say I had about 18 months of just real inner, and it never really affected, I didn't get to the point of depression where I can't function.
Right.
But inside, it was dead.
Yeah.
And, I was dying, and I was very, very broken. And, even suicidal thoughts, some of that stuff I would never even dreamed I could experience.
Right, yeah.
I've loved Jesus since I was 7. That can't happen.
Yeah, right, exactly. So funny how we think that way sometimes.
Right? And so kind of out of that, though, just starting thinking not just about my, the Lord restored me spiritually, amazingly. That's a huge story. But also in that kind of really beginning to think about this body, soul, and spirit and how it's connected, and kind of began not only with my body, or not with my spirit and my relationship with the Lord, but looking at my body like, I am not right. I mean, yes, I'm getting older, but I think, I've miscarried, so there's obviously my body wasn't able to carry, and we don't know.
Right.
If there was a problem with a baby, we don't know that, but something was off.
Yeah.
And so started pursuing body-wise what's going on,
right?
And I'm, I was almost 40, so our bodies just change. They just do, and
yes, they do. As I have pulled out my reading glasses to do this, and I mean that's not anything compared to the hormones that change and all that kind of stuff. But they do. I mean, like, it's so funny. I mean, this is just kind of a side note thing, but like, especially when I'm talking to my junior high and high school age kids. And we're talking about finding your core and your center, because that's an important thing in yoga, and it's an important thing in dance. And we always think of that kind of in an upper, like our upper abs. And I'm like, well, you're a female. It's your womb. Like, that's your center.
Yeah.
Even for turns and, just being stable. That's when we say it needs to come from your core. That's your core. And I said, and that is going to change. I said, I mean, I can watch all of you from the time you hit 11, and then when you're 13, you're going to be struggling again to find it.
So
then when you're 16, you're going to struggle to figure that part out. When you're 18 and when you're 20, it all changes. I said, your hips change.
It's true.
The womb, your core, your center changes. And then it's like after we've had babies and everything, we kind of forget that has changed, and we always need to be checking in with that. And that, I mean, that'll preach spiritually too, but like it really does. We need to be aware of how much as women,
right,
we change constantly. So
and I think I'm an Enneagram 3, which we can go into Enneagram later. If you know anything about the Enneagram, I don't check in. I just keep moving.
Heck yeah.
And so you just go, and not awareness is not one of my top values.
Mine either. So
so it's like, I think all of a sudden in my late 30s, there's this wake up call to, hey, you need to check in and be aware and know what's going on. And the Lord made it impossible not to do that.
Yeah.
So
sometimes he does that too.
right.
Come on, Jesus.
He just loves us too much to let us stay
That's
where
right.
we're at, right?
That's right.
He's taking us somewhere. So I'll just finish that up. That's what led to my quest. Hormone health. It's like, okay, something's off. And just my own research into Pinterest even. I mean, I'm just online. And one of the things was yoga.
Yeah.
Was good for hormones, for infertility. And I had to stop and ask the question to myself, what do I believe about yoga?
Yeah.
I grew up in a culture where it was taboo. It was wrong. It was new age, always, it was demonic, all of the things. And it wasn't, growing up in western and then central Nebraska, it's not very prevalent there.
Right.
It's getting more so, but growing up, it was not there.
Yeah.
And even in my early married life, it wasn't in my face, so I never really had to think about it.
Right.
But now I'm hit with this question, like, this could help me. What do I think about this? Can Christians do yoga?
Right.
What is... And so that's where my journey of just kind of looking and, 2.5, 3 years later now.
Yeah.
I'm an instructor, so that tells you what I found for myself.
Yes.
But
it's funny, you saying it like that made me kind of stop and think. I've never had to question that. Like I guess growing up growing up in the dance world. And I mean, listen, this is East Texas. It's not like I'm in New York, and I'm not blindsided by a real dance culture all the time.
The professional side of things.
The professional setting. There's, all walks of life within that community, and but you do get a different view of people and things in that within that dance world, and yoga has always been one of those things that, for a dancer, especially a dancer that is getting older or has had multiple injuries, the go-to thing. So if, I needed something kind of in that, area of healing, or like this needs to be a different kind of stretch, I need to dig into this. Yeah. That's where I went.
Gotcha.
So it wasn't, and I don't know that it's not like I studied yoga. So I just was like, well, that's kind of the religious aspect of a traditional yoga. I just kind of was like, well, that's for that. I'm just using this for my healing and for my body. I know what I believe. Like I just could completely separate it. So it's weird to think of it not in that way, like, oh, you were supposed to probably look at that, and I didn't. I just was like, nope, this is what we need to do.
Yeah. Well, I think originally, like, I kind of was like, well, okay, these are, there's a lot of stretching and different things, and so, well, I'll just do the poses,
right,
and completely disconnect it from anything else. It's just a physical thing,
right.
And I think you can do that. But as I jumped into Holy Yoga, and the first thing I did, there's a book called Holy Yoga by Brooke Boone, who's the founder of the organization, and just her perspective on it. And that yoga is a practice, true yoga is a practice that involves body, soul, and spirit.
Right.
And you need to decide, what does that look like for you? And for me, it's Jesus all day long. It's Jesus.
Right. Yeah.
And so as I am practicing yoga, it is an offering of worship to the Lord at the same time as it's stretching, as it's hard, as it's relaxing, whatever I'm doing. we compartmentalize. It's so easy for us to separate physical from spiritual and even emotional. And you see it more and more as the Lord's bringing it back together. I think you hear more about emotions and the emotional side and mental side and renewing your thoughts and the science behind that.
Right. Yeah.
It's coming into the church, but for so long, it's just been very disconnected.
Yeah.
And so connecting all of those into a practice, it just made sense to me.
Yeah.
It's like, I can just work on my body, my emotions, my healing, and connect with Jesus.
Right. Yeah.
It's a no-brainer to me.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Just saying that about the compartmentalized, I have just random notes here that I took last night when there's probably no telling what half of them say. But one of the things I had written down was how much of the Western culture has compartmentalized worldview. But God's culture and the kingdom culture is an integrated worldview. So, I mean, like we need to, if we're really going to step into this thing of a kingdom culture, we, in everything we do, need to be looking at it as mind, body, and spirit.
Yeah.
Just even for me, because and when we get into the Enneagram stuff, I'm a 1. But even personality-wise, just me, my mom said, I should have named you something that, your name meant workhorse. That's just, And it is. When you take, different personality tests and all that stuff, I'm a doer.
Yeah.
And I am happiest with a full plate. I mean, yes, occasionally, like today, I kind of want to crawl in a hole and put a blanket over my head. We can get into that later. Because my Enneagram 1 was showing loudly earlier. Anyway.
As they do.
Yes, they do. We try to, overcome things. But anyway, I, even when taking on, doing the radio show, I probably didn't do that. I just was an automatic yes when it was offered to me. But as the time goes on, and especially lately, it's one of those things where I say, okay, God, is this incorporating all 3 of those things, or is it too much on one of those things? Because, I mean, for me right now, my body is in a bind at times. And I mean, because some days I join her, most I don't, because
I'm so happy when you do, but I understand when you don't.
I know. And it's so good too. When I leave, I'm like, oh, that was so good. I needed it. I needed just to breathe through movement and whatever. But she also comes on Thursdays at the end of the day, and that's my, I'm done. But, I have to be, and we need to be careful and think about all those things, even in work or, extra kind of curricular, I guess. I don't know.
Yeah.
Just learning to integrate how we do things
because
or
it's
view
happening
things.
anyway.
Yeah,
and
it is.
What you do affects your emotions. I mean, it does, and so you can be aware of that and work with that, or you just can truck on through and then get bombarded by it later. And why am I acting like this?
Right.
Well,
yeah.
You've plowed through and said yes too many just the work.
Yes.
And now it's pressurized you.
Yes.
I get it. I do it.
Yep. It really does. It will catch up.
Yeah.
So how about y'all? Are you checking in at times to see if things are integrated, if you're really living in that moment of mind, body, and soul, or mind, body, and spirit? Or is it, do you look at things and wonder if it's too much for something, or, if it's not enough for another, and just really doing that kind of check-in with God to make sure that you're hitting all those right spots. And this is a perfect time of year to really look at that before we enter a new year and a new season to see where you can, maybe incorporate more. There's really not such a thing as a balanced life. I think there's a lot of give and take that we have to understand and be okay with. But in this, are we balanced in mind, body, and spirit? This is something I think that we can really achieve.
Here's your host, Jennifer Ballou.
So back into our conversation, we're going to kind of finish out this topic of kind of pushing through things and then really get into Dani's testimony and just that, coming back to that place of awe and wonder of how good God is and what He has done for us.
Even when you said earlier, like, you don't look, you just keep going. My chiropractor, the first time he saw me, he said, you do know you're twisted from like a head to toe, like you even have a rib out of place. Thanks. And I was like, what? He was like, no, your body is very evident of that. The fact, he said, do you just like push on? I said, well, yeah, what else are you supposed to do? Like, there's another choice. He was like, well, your body really reflects that. This is going to take you a while to undo. And so 3 years later, still working through some of that, but we're getting there. So it's crazy. Yeah. So finish your story, because there is more to this.
So I just, as I started reading that book, Holy Yoga, and realizing that this can help me on so many levels. I'm not going to disconnect yoga poses from the practice of yoga and what it can be, because I can find Holy Spirit in this, and I need Him.
Yes.
Yeah. And so I started reading that book, and I was like, I not only want to practice this, I want to teach this, which is it was kind of off the wall, because I'm a teacher by nature, but not in the fitness world at all.
Right. Yeah.
I'm an off again, on again workout person all my life, never consistent in any of that. And so bringing that into kind of a fitness realm, was, I don't know what I'm thinking.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
I just had that, this is what I want to do. And so it was very expensive, not within my budget, and the Lord provided. It was like, I want to do this. I don't know if it'll be this year. They had a session starting within a few months at the beginning of the year, and this was like fall. But sometime I'm going to do this. This is what I want to do. And the Lord, by the end of the year, had provided for that training. So I was able, I first decided in a summer that yoga, I think, is okay for Christians. And then 6 months later, I start my training. And so in that training, it was mostly online, and just began, we had requirements of practice times weekly. I think it was 4 hours a week. And the Lord would just meet me. I don't even know what was happening, but just times of worship, times of tears, and the physical was happening, but that was a side point. Like, it was there, and my body began to reflect that, but that wasn't my focus.
Right. Yeah.
And so just, healing, and then the things He would bring up, but He would work through, even on my mat without, He's so faithful. If He shows you something He wants to work in you, He's not just saying, here, work on this.
Yeah.
He actually is like, here, I'm going to do this in you. And He does it in so many ways. And so just beginning to pull up the junk and root out the junk. And at the end of 9 weeks online, you go, well, they call it a really nice word of immersion retreat or something, and it's up in the mountains of Arizona. It's beautiful, and it's retreat, only it's actually boot camp, and it's intense. And because it's yoga, it's not just intense physically, it's intense emotionally and spiritually, and it's intense. It just I don't even know a better word. And so it was beautifully messy and hard, and but the Lord did so much. And I will say, in that, I think it was probably the second night, we were in a training, like an evening session, and Brooke Boonigan, she's the founder, and she's an excellent preacher. It's like, I think that was one thing. The first 5 weeks of my training online was Bible study. Like, they didn't even get into really yoga, but it was like foundational gospel truth.
Yeah.
And I needed that. Like, it's like, I love Jesus since I was 7. This is all things I know.
Yeah, and you need that
But
refresher
I did.
course.
So much to, I think sometimes it's easy to do this when you've known the Lord a long time. For me, it was, I realized I didn't know I was doing it, but it's easy to kind of make this separation when you know Jesus died on the cross for your sins and you're living that out.
Yeah.
That separation, well, they still need Jesus.
Yeah.
Like, I've already met him, but and there's like this separation between the people, believers and unbelievers, those that know him, those that don't. And we're never called to make that line.
Right.
And so the reality came back to me. It's like, no, I still need the reality of the gospel and Jesus' death on the cross and resurrection. It's me. It's mine.
Yeah.
Yes, I maybe made a decision a long time ago, but I can't disconnect. I don't know. And it's hard to explain, but there was like I don't know, like I said, a separation of us and them. And
yeah. No, I get what you're saying. I just, even in this Christmas season, which, I love Christmas, but I love all the Christmas stuff too. Like, the decorations and just the fun and the music and
yes.
Sometimes I don't like the music, but anyway, that's another story.
The same song over and over again with your dance girls,
yes.
maybe?
And there's not that many to choose from.
Right.
But anyway, but it was just this sudden realization this season that, wow, you sent that baby here because you wanted to connect with me. Like, it wasn't that this baby was sent to make the world a better place. That kind of a twist that we kind of get at Christmas. But without Christmas, we don't have the cross.
Yeah.
We don't have that grace and mercy and the, access to the throne. That baby, that flesh and blood that came was because of a connection God wanted physically with us that is just is mind-blowing.
For sure.
And we do, when you have grown up in, this, I was 7 as well when, I made that decision and was baptized and all those things, and you've grown up in it, you forget to be in awe of it at times,
That's such a great word. Yes.
Yeah.
To just bring that awe back and that wonder back. And that's what happened to me spiritually, in that just that he reminded me of his grace and his love so much. And so, went through that. And then I'm in this week-long, just intense, insane stuff. And the thing for me, I really believe that the Lord gave it to me, not just for me, but to share. And so I believe why he put so strongly in me, become an instructor.
Right. Yeah.
And I was going to share this story. That's where I was going with this.
Sorry.
No, that's all right. Because it kind of connects back to the miscarriage and things. So we're live, at this week-long intense thing, and Brooke's sharing. And she doesn't do this a lot. I've listened to her now for 2 years, and I haven't this is not a normal mode for her, but she started really prophetically declaring and had this thing about infertility and miscarriage, and she just basically went off about this. This was not normal protocol.
Wow, yeah.
And I had come to peace with not having a baby. Like the Lord had so healed me, and I was good. There was such a just contentment, I'm good. But when she started, and maybe it was even started before that, I would get these little inklings like, I could still have a baby. I'm like, where is this coming from?
Yeah.
Like, I'm
Stop.
good. Like, like, I don't, like, I really have a peace and I'm fine. And so she starts with that, and I'm like, I don't get this. And I went down front just because, like, this is resonating with me, but it shouldn't be because I'm good. Like the Lord really, there's a real healing in my heart, but there was something there, and just had prayer, and I went about my way. I mean, it was a great moment with the Lord. Felt good. That was at the end of April, and really, I was fine, and still had that contentment. And it wasn't, I went from. I think sometimes we can find out what's really going on with us. Those things we obsess about that are just constantly in our thoughts. It's like, okay, there's something. And it wasn't anymore. The Lord had done that. Well, out of the sun, all the blue in August, we get a positive pregnancy test. So totally I wasn't expecting this now. And so it's like the connection to me was so, I started looking at yoga from a physical standpoint because I need my hormones healed. And then the Lord uses it even to use someone within it to speak out declaration and healing and this. And then just a few months later, here I am. And we have a son. Yes.
And he's so cute.
Oh, he's a kick in the pants.
Those surprise ones,
Yes, the last two have been that for us, with a 9-year gap between number 3 and 4, and then an 8-year gap between 4 and 5. Have just been not planned, but very much exciting surprises.
Keeps you young. Is that what they say?
That's what they say, whoever they are. I don't know if it's going to kill us early or keep us young. It'll do one of the two, I think.
There you go. Oh gosh, that's amazing. But so what with yoga and continuing in it, do you still find yourself him still pulling things up, or is it just this more of I don't know, my mom and I've had this conversation a few times of especially kind of getting into the Enneagram and things like that, where you go, oh, there's some maturity that needs to happen in my life, to really get to that place of original intent, what God originally intended for you and what he's called you to. Do you think in yoga that still kind of helps? Am I making sense?
I don't know. No, I think so. Those in my training, those dedicated hours that I'm doing, so many sweet times and hard times. And I would say not every time on my mat is that way. 2 years later is not that way. I think that I started teaching. I had a launch. I was working already at a women's gym, working the front desk. And so they just had me come in to do, it was Christ-centered yoga still, holy yogas. I never separate Jesus from yoga. It was a secular studio, if you can use terminology like that, which I don't love.
Me either.
But, it's just, it wasn't labeled a Christian studio, but the woman who started it as a believer, running business as kingdom believers.
Right.
And she was very much, do not take Jesus out of this. You're going to have who you have, and this is holy yoga, so you're going to do this. And so having that permission was great. And we had scheduled the launch for I think 3 weeks after I got home, which was really probably good, or I would have backed out because it was too scary. This was new for me. Another thing, I don't know if this probably does fit in my 3, but my personality is I don't really want to do things I don't know if I'm good at yet. If I know I'm good at it, I'm all in. But if I don't know, it's probably not.
Let me throw up a few times before I go in the classroom.
Yes. So I'm the kid who doesn't raise their hand because I might be wrong on the answer. Unless I'm guaranteed success, I'm not going in. And so the Lord's been real faithful over the last couple of years to kind of break some of that off of me.
Yes.
Here, you're going to try this. I don't think I could do that. Oh, you're going to try. And so I got into teaching immediately. And I got pregnant just a few months later, taught all through my pregnancy. I was teaching sometimes 5 times a week. And I don't know if it's just part of the process. I look back, it's not like I have any regrets, but I do think I did get into, I'm working on yoga to teach yoga. It became less of a personal thing. There would be times
Yes.
where I'd get on my mat for myself in the Lord.
Yeah.
But a lot of it was, I need to get something together to teach.
Yes.
And
yeah.
so-
I mean, I've been there
Yeah.
for a lot with dance. I mean, you know,
Yeah,
I mean,
yeah.
our mission and our goal at my studio is different than a lot of other studios. And sometimes I forget that almost. Like I get back into no, we're here to teach dance. And we are. We want to teach dance, and we want to teach it with excellence, and we want to do it, you know, the technique and all those things. But there was a heart issue to it that you do sometimes are like, no, I just need to get in the classroom and get this choreography done. And yes, I picked a great song and da-da-da-da. But when everything is stripped away, like it has been in 2020,
Right.
let me tell you, you go, wait a minute. I've been missing the heart issue. Like, yeah, it's a great song, but I need this. I'm going to tell the kids what this, you know, like,
Yeah, that's good.
let's minister to the kids through this song so that they can then, you know, put their perspective of it and dance it
Yeah.
into that piece, you know. But yeah, you forget.
I think
You forget
even
sometimes,
if you're
like,
a
just-
teacher or a preacher, it's like it's probably easy to get in that place where I read the Bible so I have something to share with someone else.
Right,
And
yeah.
coming back to I need this for me. And so I would have times of that, but I would say the bulk of what I was doing became I am practicing, and even my time not teaching people was at home. If I was on my mat, it's because I'm in preparation. So I think the Lord did a lot of things there, but it became less personal for me.
Yeah.
And so, you know, I took a few weeks off or a couple months off after I had my son, and then went right back into teaching again. And then we hit the first of this year and still teaching and Zoom taught, you know,
Yeah,
it's like
yeah,
everything
you've done
shifts,
shit,
but
yeah.
you just keep going. And, but I felt a stirring at the beginning of the year, to make it personal again. I need to discover my yoga and even take it beyond the basics of things. And so really, I went into my 500 hour, which is another, your initial instructor certification is 200 hours you have to have for that. And that's across the board. And then another 300 is required for that 500, which we call it a master's course in holy yoga. But so an extra, and looking at the course modules, it's like this, I want this not to, yes, I want to teach it and share it, but I need this for me. I need to bring this back to a deeper work in me again this year. And so I really, when we found out we were going to move here, I wasn't sure that I wanted to teach right away. That's right.
Giggle, giggle.
But I didn't feel the Lord's no. I would have told you, no, I feel like this is for me. So definitely was fine with that, yes, but it's scaled back so much from what it was a year ago. And so it really, I've been able to get on my mat for myself, and even more so understanding when I'm getting to my edge, and it's better when I figure it out lower of my edge than at the height of my edge when I'm about to jump off the cliff.
Right, yeah.
You know, if I could just go practice yoga for 20 minutes and get with Jesus and move my body and breathe, I think I could be a nicer mom and a nicer wife and a nicer person. And so my husband's great about, like, if I go to him and say, hey, I'm going to go lock myself away for 30 minutes, he's probably more than willing to. Please go. And so I would say that's my yoga this year.
Right,
I need 20 or 30 minutes to just get everything realigned.
Yeah,
Things are going crazy within me, and because of that, without me, or like around me. So it's not the in-depth healings as much, but the, like, I need you in this moment.
Yeah.
And there you are. And I've moved my body a bit, and I feel better that way. And my emotions are calmed down, and spiritually I'm reconnected with you, which means I can go reconnect with others now in a happy way.
Yes. I probably needed a little bit of that this morning. Might still, but time is of the essence now. So anyway, that's another story. I had something I was going to say about it. I have no idea. I don't know. I love moments like this on air. So cool.
We'll be back in just a moment and see if I got my brain back together.
We're back with Refuel. Here's your host, Jennifer Ballou.
If you haven't gathered by now, that day of the interview was a little bit of a rough morning for me. And when I lost my train of thought, well, I never quite got it back. So we just changed subjects. And we're going to get into some stuff about the whole New Age thought process and yoga and all of that kind of stuff. So good stuff.
Yeah, I know. Which way do we want to go? Well, let's just... I don't know. I think if this is your first show, you probably are thinking, what in the world are they talking? They're talking about yoga. Oh my gosh. But I feel like if you've listened, especially over the last 2 months, I think they know my stand on that whole thing of saying things are new age and discounting. This is where I struggle. You may struggle in this too. And I've said it so many times on here. Satan isn't a creator. Like, he cannot create.
Right.
And I did take a couple little notes that I thought, maybe this would help a little bit. And it was a John Paul Jackson message that really had nothing to do with what I'm talking about. It was more about good and evil, because it was like, if God is good, why did he create evil? But he didn't. He created Lucifer,
right,
who was in the heavenlies a worship leader,
right.
And like, if you want to talk dance and movement and all those kind of things, I can go on forever. And I think on the 20th, I'm getting to share a few things at our church, and I hope Jonathan knows what he's gotten himself into.
That'd be good.
About that. So
that'd be good.
I'm like, oh, I've got like a notebook of notes that I could just... But anyway... He created this magnificent angel who, when he moved, he made music. Like, every part of him was just the most beautiful thing you've ever could imagine. But then Lucifer placed himself higher than God. And so evil and sin was not created. It was just an absence of God. When Lucifer put himself in that place of, he didn't need, God, and he was cast from heaven, that's when things shifted and changed, and there was evil and sin, and there's I have a whole teaching about the transference of that worship leadership role going to the people, and that's why we need movement and things like that. But we won't jump into that. But I just think we need to remember that is where Satan started. Yeah, he wasn't, the little red thing with horns that's not cute at all. And so he perverts, right? Which he perverted himself, right, into this other thing. He perverted himself into this thing that he thought was higher than God, and all of that happened. And then when God spoke, so everything that is created was spoken. It's a spoken word, right? Right. So we are full of sound. And sound created light, and from those two things, then everything else was created. So we are full of sound and light. So when you hear things in yoga, or you might know, like more of the other kind of religions, is it
Hinduism, yeah.
Does Buddha? Well, it's not.
The more we talk about Hinduism, yeah.
Okay.
So
is that where yoga kind of like...
They latched on to that practice and really made it theirs for their religion.
Okay.
So,
but when you hear things about your chakras, your auras, your energy, I mean, you know, there's people, you do walk into a space and you're with them and you think, I'm not getting a real good feeling here. That's a truth.
Yes.
Because we are made of energy, light, sound, those things. It's not something that Satan created.
Right.
So I just keep thinking, like, just because we don't understand something, and I have that written down, like, we can miss out on so much of God simply because we don't have the knowledge or understanding. So then we put it away as in, that's bad.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
This doesn't feel natural, or it's, you know, whatever. And that's something else. Like, just because, like, a culture, like, the Indian people, you know, they practice Hinduism. My brain has suddenly fallen out because I have so much going on in it. That would be more correct, right?
Yes.
The Indian people. Okay.
Yes.
So, but in and of itself, that culture is neutral. A culture,
they're just people.
Yeah, they're people. It's a culture that I can't say right now because my mouth is dry. But because, you know, my culture feels more right, doesn't make it holy.
Right.
Because that culture feels different doesn't make it unholy.
Right.
It's neutral. I'm even neutral. It's what fills the vessel that makes it holy or unholy. 100%. And that's true of the practice of yoga, or, you know, even like a person, and talking about those energies and auras and all those kind of chakras.
Well, you know, if you read the New Testament, if you have those words in your mind, you'd be shocked how much it's actually there.
Yeah.
And you're like, whoa, wait, what is... I think we sometimes read with our Christianese... It's very vague. Like Jesus says, you're the salt and the light, and it's a vague metaphor, whatever. It's like, no, what does that really mean? I mean, I think sometimes we take things that
are very literal.
Yes.
And we try to make them...
We make it very out there, spiritual, vague, when it's like, no, actually, we live on a planet. They need a little more than out there, spiritual, vague. They need Jesus embodied. They need him. Need Jesus embodied. They need him. Like, they need a tangible presence of Jesus.
Yeah.
And we're called to be that. And I don't think any believer would argue with that. But then you throw some words in that might overlap with some New Age things or something. It gets a little scary. It's like, well, no, not that.
Yeah, that's not what he meant.
that can't be right.
Yeah. I don't know. It's just... well, you know, I go off on a tangent about this quite often.
I will say that's something that I, over and over again, through every training I've been through, every module, every new thing I discover, even with the chakras, I am so in awe. Again, back to that word of the Lord. This hasn't taken me away from him. You know, I had not a lot of when I you know, put out there, I'm a social media person. I put out there, this is what I'm going to be doing. I had a couple people. I think, I don't know, I'm the personality type nobody wants to confront, I think, a lot of times, which I've learned about myself that probably is an unteachable thing because people think they're going to get a sharp edge. So I'm working on that. Jesus is working on that in me. But I didn't have a lot, but I had a couple that were very much... hey, you need this. This is not good. You need to be scary. And I now have lost my train of thought. Where was I going with that?
I need to turn that.
But okay, so here's what it is. So okay, if you do yoga, you'll get demon possessed. I mean, just different. There's all stuff all over the board. I turn and I ask my husband, when does this happen? Because I'm 2 years in now, and all I get hit with is I am in awe of my body and how I was created. I am in awe of how Jesus, he's brilliant. Like, this is connected to this, and he made this work like this. I'm constantly in awe of a creator that so intricately pieced things and knows things and designed things. I just, that to me, it's like I just fall in love with him more and more when I sit and go, I learn a new thing about how this is connected with that, and I'm like, holy cow, Jesus, what? And this is amazing. So to me, it's been a constant journey of awe and wonder. Wow, God, because I'm not a super sciencey for the science sake. I don't like that. But when I see it and connect it to my own life right now, it blows my mind. I'm just in awe of him. And wonder how anybody could practice some of these things or believe these things without Creator. Like, it so much points to him.
I know.
Like, how could you live a life like that and think you yourself are the end all? There's got to be. I mean, to me, it all points back to Jesus. It just it makes sense.
And I could never be a scientist. I shouldn't say that. I don't have the patience for that kind of stuff. But I soak it up. I love, like, Ray Hughes. I love all his stuff because he is, like, so into quantum physics and all the kind of just crazy stuff that your brain goes, what? It's now mush. I can't even. You talk for 5 minutes, and I'm like, I had to go process for a week now. But, like, science is continually proving the fact that we have a creator, and it is continually proving his word to be taken as a literal thing. I mean, the rocks crying out, guess what? They do. That blood speaks, guess what? That's literal. It does. Your DNA has a sound. Like, science has proven it. It's just, and I again can kind of, I understand the perspective of people being like, well, no, I don't want to touch that. And there are probably some people with their backgrounds and with just even a family history stuff, that maybe they shouldn't. But don't discount it. I really feel like that term, New Age, gives Satan more power than he has. Like, you're saying he's created something when he hasn't. He's not capable. But, if you don't have the understanding or the knowledge, or look for it. And don't take our word for it. Like, we have done our research. We've walked through a lot of it. And we've found the truth.
And I think you have to do that with Holy Spirit, because you can find things to prove and disprove everything. I mean, I can think of a couple world-known churches that if you're looking for bad, you're going to find somebody wrote something bad, because you're going to find what you look for. And so, and anybody can write anything on the internet, and it must be true because it's there. So you have to take the Lord into, and I think, like you said, everybody's journey is going to look different. We are all on this walk with the Lord on this planet until we walk into heaven with him. Just looking for wholeness, for abundance, for a connection with him and with others. That's what we're called to here. And so we all, walking through life with our hands open to him. I think that's he knows your background. He knows what you're prone to, prone to our weaknesses, prone to our faults. He knows.
Thanks for joining us, everyone. I hope you'll come back next week to hear more of our conversation. I do want to give you a couple of email addresses and websites in case you want to look Dani up or join us for Holy Yoga. You can go to her website. It's mytriunewellness.org. That is my, triune, TRIUNE, wellness.org. She's also on Instagram as meditating.mama and Triune Wellness Yoga. You can also email me. We have a new website. It's refuelwithjennifer.com, and the new email is jennifer@refuelwithjennifer.com. You can find me on Facebook and Instagram as well. We'd love to connect with you. We also have a private group for Refuel listeners that want a little bit more than just the radio show and things like that. So anyway, I hope you'll join us next week. It's going to be another awesome show.